Hello everybody, I hope you're all doing great. In this video I'm going to talk about back button focus. Why many wildlife and nature photographers use back button focus and how they set up their camera to do so. And then why I don't use back button focus and reasons why I don't. But I have a similar way, or actually a quite different way of setting up my camera, but I can achieve the same results than cameras and photographers that use back button focus. So for those of you that don't know what back button focus is, the key feature of back button focus is the separation of the button that takes the shot and the autofocus engage button. So back button focus is basically the separation of those buttons. So in simpler words, back button focus is basically the setup where the front shutter button is only used for taking the image, not like the default where half press is autofocus engage and then full press take the image. But now it's only taking the image, and the back button, that's the button where your thumb naturally rests on most cameras. That is the button that we set up to engage the autofocus. So what this allows is, it allows you to have two autofocusing modes in one, basically, indirectly. Most wildlife and bird photographers use continuous autofocus, and that is because we are shooting moving subjects and we want to track them all the way as they're moving closer and further away from us. We want to track them and keep them in focus the whole time. And then single shot autofocus, that's basically an autofocus mode that when you first push the focus engage button, whether it's the back one or the front one, the camera will focus on whatever the point is that's selected and then stop focusing the rest of the way. As long as you're holding in the button, it's not going to refocus again. Even if you move the point away from the subject to something else, the camera is not going to refocus. So basically it's a focusing mode where the initial focus is lasting all the way. It's not going to refocus even when the point moves to something else. So back button focus allows you to have those two in one, because you can focus on something and then leave the button, and then the camera won't refocus. The lens is going to stay right where it is, and then you basically have a single point autofocus also, while you can have continuous autofocus. Having the two focus modes in one is very useful, because it basically eliminates you going into the settings and changing the autofocus from continuous to single shot. And going into the settings can take some time, and many wildlife photographers would tell you that is enough time to miss the shot. And that is why having the two focus modes in one is very useful. So the first reason why many photographers use back button focus is it allows them to focus and recompose while in continuous focus after tracking a subject. That is very useful because it takes time sometimes to move the autofocusing point around to where you want your subject to be in the frame for compositional purpose. So in this case, back button focus can eliminate, first of all, going into the settings and changing to single point autofocus, and then secondly, but most importantly, not changing the autofocusing point around, because that can take time. And then you have to change it back when you want to track the subject again, or the subject changes position and you want to change your framing. And that is because you can focus on the subject with your back button, and when the camera acquired focus, you can leave the button and then compose your shot just as you want it, and press the shutter button without engaging the autofocus. And that brings me to the second reason why many photographers use back button focus, and that is you can help your camera avoid hunting. So for those of you that don't know what hunting is, it's basically your camera not sure on what to focus on, or it's just not really getting the focus. So the camera would focus further than closer, then further than closer, and your subject comes into focus every once in a while, but you can't get the camera to stay on your subject. And that is where you can get your camera to focus, and when your camera reaches the subject and the subject is in focus, you can leave the button, depress the button, the autofocus button, and then your camera will stay focused on the subject, and the camera won't hunt anymore, and you might lose the shot because your subject isn't in focus and the camera was focused on something else at that moment. So that can eliminate hunting. So then the third reason why many photographers use back button focus is kind of similar to the first point, and that is focus and recompose, but something more than just focus and recompose. Most DSLRs focusing points only covers the inner part of the frame, and it doesn't cover the outmost side of the frame, and that is where focus and recompose also comes in very handy, because when you want to frame your subject to be very close to one of the edges, you can't have an autofocus point focusing on it. So that's then the only way to not lose focus on your subject and move your subject away from autofocusing points is with a single point or just back button focus, because then you can focus and then move the subject anywhere you want in the frame without the camera going and focusing on a point that you selected that is not your subject. So then another thing that is very handy of back button focus, and that would be the fourth point that I could find many people use back button focus. I just want to add in here, I said that is another reason why other people use back button focus, although I also use that feature of back button focus, but with my setup I'm not technically using back button focus. That's the reason I said other people and I didn't include myself. So then another thing that is very handy of back button focus, and that would be the fourth point that I could find many people use back button focus, is the ability to pre-focus on, say, a branch or something, and where you know your subject might be. And this is only appropriate for very fast moving subjects like birds, and subjects that your camera might not be able to track as well. So that allows for pre-focus. So you can pre-focus on a branch and then choose a framing that you might like without the camera not focusing on the branch and focusing on something else. So in that case, you can focus with the back button on the branch or whatever your where your subject might be. Focus on that, and then depress the button and compose your shot as you like and as you think might give you the best shot when the bird or the subject comes into the frame and you get the subject where you expected it to be. And then the last point, and that would be the fifth point that I know many photographers say that's the reason they also use back button focus, is it gives them the ability to switch to manual focus instantly without physically going onto the switch on the lens and changing it from autofocus to manual focus. Personally, I can't, my lens or camera, I'm not sure about this one, but even if I use back button focus and I don't depress the back button to disengage the autofocus, my lens is still locked on onto the setting it was last focused on. So that doesn't work for me. It might work for you, and this is the only point that my setup won't work. So let me show you how I set up my camera to acquire similar results. So I set up my camera to have the back button that other photographers use for engaging the autofocus system. I use my back button for disengaging the autofocusing system. And this gives you the same capabilities because I still use the shutter button for focusing, but when I don't want the camera to refocus in any of those 5 scenarios, or 4 actually, the fifth one doesn't count. in any of those 4 situations, if I want single point simulated autofocus, I can just press the back button in this case and lock the focus right where it is and have similar capabilities than all the other setups where they use back button focus. If you like this video, please go down there and like it, and subscribe if you want to see more. Ring the bell so you can get notified when I post again, and share it to someone that might find it very, very useful. A fish eagle just landed on that tree, and I saw it from my house yesterday, and I came down with my bicycle as fast as I could just to photograph that thing. I might go and take another image of it right now. Fish eagles can get very, very big, and it's one of my dream birds to photograph one day. I did yesterday, but it was quite dark already, and the light was starting to fade, and my camera isn't really good in low light situations. But I think today might be a good day. Although it's cloudy, it might give me some good chances to photograph that eagle. It's not that big, but really I love those birds and the sound they make. And I can't believe he's actually here. He wasn't here a week ago, but I see he's now here quite often, and I'm very, very pleased to see that. Let me finish the video and maybe bring you along as I go try to take an image of it. The river is quite flooded now, so the place here where it's normally above the water is now flooded and underwater, but it's not that deep, and there are things that I can walk on to walk over the water and go closer to where the bird is sitting right now. Hopefully I can bring you along, not fall into the water, and yes, so get some footage of it. I have 2 batteries here. Yesterday my battery almost died while trying to photograph it, and yes, so let me finish the video first. Okay. So the first benefit to how I set up my camera to lock the autofocus when I push the back button is, I guess it's a little simpler. Only one button is quite simple, and it's less to worry about. In tricky situations when I want to use continuous focus, I can only use one button, which is simpler and gives me more brain power. And I know you can get used to this, but I tried it and I couldn't get it to work with me. And that is very simple to use only one button in the trickier situations. And when I have the time and less of a hurry situation where the bird is actually sitting still or my subject is not moving, I can switch to using 2 buttons, which is a little more complicated, and then I can focus on recomposing and getting the composition that I want. And then that can go with the second reason, and second reason I use back button where I don't use back button focus is my response time might be a little quicker with only one button than 2 buttons, and that's basically the reason. And then I have another reason, that's comfort. When I use the back button for longer periods of time, my thumb could get very, very tired, and especially, I don't know if it's just this body, but my thumb could get quite tired, and after a while of shooting and engaging the autofocus for longer periods of time. And then another reason is actually the way I shoot. I usually use continuous focus, and so that gives me about 80% time that I only use continuous autofocus, and I don't need to focus and recompose, or I don't need single point autofocus capabilities. So that gives me 80% on only one button and maybe 20% on two buttons. So that makes sense for me. And then the last one, and it isn't a very worthy point, and especially for wildlife photographers, when I hand someone a camera, this camera, and tell them to take an image of me or something, I don't. It's less complicated to explain to them that one must push the back button first or to focus, and then push the front button, and they only press it halfway, and then it doesn't actually take the image. So yes, it's more complicated. It's already complicated telling them to first half press the shutter and then full press to take the image. And the thing is, I don't really focus and recompose a lot, and that is because the subject I shoot are really sometimes very small in the frame, and I crop almost on every shot I take, and that almost misses the point for focusing and recomposing because I can crop afterwards. And the thing is, my lens is all the lenses. I'm pretty sure every lens out there are more sharp in the middle than on the edges. So focusing and recomposing moves my subject to a softer spot on the lens. So in most of the cases, my subject is very small, and I crop in on it, and in that case I can use the sharpest, especially when cropping. I really want to use the sharpest part of my lens, and that would be dead center, and that is also where the most accurate focusing point in most consumer grade DSLRs would be. And this video is only to show you how I set up my camera. If you see or back button focus works for you, go ahead, use it. I only want you to take the best images that you possibly can. But if back button focus doesn't work for you, like it didn't for me, try my setup and use the back button rather for a focusing lock, and that would give you very similar results. I hope this video was helpful, and I hope you learned something, and maybe you can set up your camera like mine, or just use back button focus. Maybe you don't even recompose at all. So whatever works for you, go ahead and use that. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye. Come along with me. I just spotted the fish eagle landing right there on the tree. It's a palm tree, and the palm tree, the top has been burned out from a lightning strike hitting it, but the eagle is sitting right there, and I see it more often now. There was never any of them right in this area, but I'm very glad to see one here. And I really love the birds, and that's one of the birds I really like to photograph one day. And this is really like my dream bird to photograph. And the river flooded this place, so everything is muddy and wet, and there are even places where normally was just ground, but now it's actually part of the river. I'm walking in the mud now. It's right in front of me, and hopefully we can get it. He did come land yesterday, but it was already getting dark. I could see him from the house about 200 meters up. I could see him land through the viewfinder of my camera with my 300mm lens. I could see it, and then I came down as fast as I can with my bicycle, and I did catch it, but it was quite dark already and the sun were almost down. Okay, I'm going to stop now. I'm taking cover behind a bush right here. So yeah, I think Yeah, I don't want to risk it. I'm going to stop the recording. Maybe when I get closer and it doesn't fly away, I might start recording and maybe you can see as well. It just flew away. I couldn't get in a photo. I didn't think it would fly away right now. As you can see, I'm on these concrete blocks that are used to. They put up nets around the citrus orchards now for various reasons, and these anchors go into the ground and anchor the nets that goes over the orchards. And yes, these are made for that. And yeah, I could see it fly, just drop down, swoop onto another tree. So there's a fence right here, so our property ends right here, but I might be able to get a shot, not very close, but might get a shot of it when I go around there, and then I can look past those trees. But yeah, the yesterday when I came to photograph it, I could come up close to it, as close as I wanted, because I don't want to shoot it from right under, so I could come as close as I wanted to. He was very uncomfortable, but he didn't fly away. But I did. He was eating, so maybe that was a reason that he wanted to keep at his food and not fly away. But he did eventually, when there was not many left, he took off and just go land in another tree right there, which is a little higher. But he ate his last pieces in that tree, and he wasn't eating right now, so he was just looking at me the whole time. And that is, I think, when he decided just to fly away. But I don't want to scare him so that he never comes back again. I want to keep him quite comfortable here. So yeah, I'm going to go over here, and I don't want to let my phone fall in the water, so I'm going to stop recording and maybe get back to you. I wanted to go there, but as you can see, there's a part right there where I couldn't cross, and so now I'm going to leave him. I think it might be better also, so that I don't scare him away forever. But yeah, I could get a boat, cross the river, and go on that side, and then get an image up like that to the bird. But the boat is up there, the paddle boat, the canoe is up there, and we have to load him on a bakkie and then bring him out down, so I don't want to do that. And yeah, so I didn't catch him this time. I did take an image of it quite far away, like from here, so I might show that to you. It's not going to be very exciting, but yes, it's something to see, and I will show you the images that I took yesterday afternoon of it also. Hopefully they come out better. I haven't edited them yet. I was busy with some other editing work. Busy creating panoramas, and my computer is so slow, so it takes me 3 hours to process one panorama. So yes, here's the images. butterflies just flopping around. Ooh, there's one. Got some great images of these butterflies that just fly around here, and I'm going to put that on the screen right now, so check them out.